back, everybody, to another episode of Brew Craic with Lochran Brewing Stores. This week, we've got an episode that we're really excited about because we have two of our favorite people involved in our interview today. We have Brian from Northern Monk over in Leeds, and then we have Jim Solberg joining us all the way from Oregon with Indie Hops. So today we're going to talk about indie hops, and then especially we're going to focus on one of my favorite new varieties of hops to come out in a long time, and that is Strata. We'll start out. Jim, let's start with you. If you don't mind telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about indie hops, how it all started, all that jazz.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Will. So to give the quick backdrop on how we came on the scene, we're relatively new in this industry. That means you might be 50 years old, I suppose. But we're about 12 years since we started building indie hops. And we really started with a good friend of mine, Roger Worthington. The two of us were kind of thinking of doing something in the craft beer world. We were both big craft beer fans, supporters. I was a home brewer that was growing. I had 8 varieties of hops growing at home, basically. And, we just were wondering, might there be opportunities, because we felt that the industry was going to grow. And, we're based in Oregon. And when we did some research, in a nutshell, we found that really Oregon was not positioned. In fact, the entire hop industry was not really focusing on the craft marketplace, and we thought there was an opportunity to come in from a position in Oregon, possibly get a chance to be a participant in the great market. So we went ahead and we built the first post-farm processing facility in Oregon. Everything was up in the Yakima Valley at the time. And the entire industry was really focused on industrial brewing, basically. And the big focus at the time still was high alpha, trying to get the elusive 2020 hop, which meant 20% alpha and 20 bales per acre produced in the United States. And so we basically decided, hey, let's set up just with a complete focus on flavor and aroma on the craft marketplace based out of Oregon. And knowing that eventually you'd have to have something unique, we went ahead and started, what we refer to now as the Indie Hops development project, which really meant a hop breeding effort and the ability to evaluate new hop genotypes, screen for potential, do some trials at the farm, some trials in the marketplace, and then have the wherewithal to launch into the marketplace. And so we started with the public hop varieties that were available, and that got us a start at that time in the market. And we're lucky that the industry has exploded like it has. And then we're equally lucky that the first hop out of our development project, Strata, was launched in 2018 and is a popular hop already.
Very good. Now, before we jump into Strata and a few other bits about indie hops that I want to touch on, we do have Brian Dickson here from Northern Monk. He is founder and technical director of Northern Monk. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian, and a little bit about Northern Monk?
Yeah, cheers, Will. Let's see, I got on board with Northern Monk sort of early 2014 when Russell, my co-founder, was just trying to get off the ground, managed to get some funding to get us going full time. So yeah, we're based in a grade 2 listed 160-year-old mill just south of Leeds City Centre. Been brewing since August 2014. Started off just the two of us, about 10 or 20 UK barrels per week. From there, we're now running off 2 production sites, 2 tap rooms. I think it's a team of around 80 people now, and we're on about what we're even doing each week. Doing about 60 heck a week now. So it's 60 heck, no, 600 heck a week. Sorry. It's grown massively in the last few years, and yeah, largely doing hop forward, West Coast IPAs originally, and then I think we were one of the first in the UK to get onto the East Coast train around 2016, and that's kind of become our bread and butter, really. Lots and lots of IPAs, a few other things on the side, but yeah, working through plenty of hops and trying new things.
Yeah, I think I remember the first spot hop order you placed with me back last year sometime. You ordered like 300 kilos on spot, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of hops on spot. Like, is that one beer? You're like, yeah, we're pretty much going to put all that in one beer. Yeah, you guys were actually one of the first UK or European breweries to win a medal at the World Beer Cup. Am I correct?
Yeah, we think, like, looking back through it, I think the first English brewery to get something in an American IPA category. So we took a bronze in session IPA back in 2016, which was, definitely a springboard for us, particularly like the export side, really pushed things forward.
Are you still brewing that same beer today? Is that
we still, so as Eternal session IPAs, we've been brewing that since early 2015 and still one of our two best selling core beers.
Fantastic.
Now, right?
Back to Jim and talk a little bit about indie hops and a little bit about Strata. One thing I notice, Jim, whenever I'm doing sensory on pellets from your facility is the difference in pellet quality, and it's truly a different style of pellet than you would find from other processors. Can you tell me a little bit about that? How that came to be? What kind of a difference that makes in beer for craft brewers, all that.
We were shaping our effort to be focused on the craft marketplace. We wanted to have an understanding of what they were looking for, and clearly it was much more about flavor and aroma and just hop character. And so, again, being that the majority of the industry at the time was really focused on very large volumes with very large breweries, their pelleting operations were very fast, and they create a lot of friction, and they were doing a little bit of superficial damage on pellets. And so we decided, hey, let's kind of we can't start from ground zero with a clean slate and see if we can't design a pellet mill that's more focused on observing the hop characteristics from the just harvested freshness, basically. And we actually commissioned an engineering firm in the egg industry who had never done a hop mill, but had done many other pellet mills and had done many low temperature applications involving alfalfa and other things for feed. And there were other reasons that it had to be at low temperature. So we went ahead and went with these people, and they kind of proved that they could do it. I actually shipped a pallet of hop bales out to Ponca City, Oklahoma, and I got on a plane and followed them out there, and they put them through a little trial mill. And without nitrogen cooling and the pellet dye, we were able to pellet in late summer in Oklahoma, and the heat and humidity at about 102 degrees Fahrenheit exiting the pellet dye. And that's really where it comes from. Our hops end up not being so aggressively extruded through the pellet dye. We run a little bit slower, and subsequently they are a little bit looser. They receive, much less temperature increase. And so when you open up the pellets, the bag, and put them in your hand, you can, fairly easily crumble them back up, and they'll open into hop particles. You'll be able to recognize what they are.
So Brian, obviously you've had experience using pellets from indie hops. What do you think about the application of the softer pellet in the brew house? How has that worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first thing that jumped out doing a rub review last year for the first time was, just like never encountered a pellet that soft, like even some of the processed versions that exist around. I think, and when we're using a lot of hops, we're dry hopping very heavily, we're still adding to tank, and that softness definitely aids the breaking up of the pellet in solution. I think it's the biggest challenge when you're adding those additions is trying to get any kind of efficiency out of that process of trying to get all the hops broken up and submerged without rousing the life out of the beer and without massive visual pickup as well. So definitely seeing improved results from softer pellets on that side. Yeah, nice innovation. And as I said, they seem to hold the flavour and so on absolutely fine. The aroma's absolutely fine. So yeah, I don't see why it's not a more common thing.
And we do have some very large customers. We supply some pretty large volumes, but you can still get it done if you're not in the really high volume part of the industry.
Yeah. We've talked about indie hops a little bit. We've talked about the softer pellets. Now, let's get to the topic of the day, and it's the hottest new hop that absolutely everyone is loving in the UK, Ireland, Europe, and that is Strata. Jim, why don't you tell us a little bit about Strata, how it developed, and yeah, just let you take it away.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so Strata is the first new genotype that we launched out of the development effort. It does take a long time to go through all the checks and balances when you're developing a new hop. So Strata was actually a cross it was an open pollinated cross at Oregon State University, they are our breeding partner on this effort. It was an open pollinated small research field of German Pearl hops. It wasn't until I think 2011 that we saw the first hops off of that single plant. Just one plant existed from a particular seed. And we got to start evaluating that hop. And I got to say, the very first time Matt Sage here in the office and I rubbed that hop, we just kind of put it down and backed up and wondered, what in the world do we have here? So you almost wish you could have it ready to go commercially right then, but it still had to go through checks and balances for disease, resistance, et cetera. And it wasn't until 2016 we were able to get a small harvest, 2015, a small harvest off of what we call an advanced nursery at two of our main farm partners, Coleman Agriculture and Goshi Farms, where you might have 20 hills of the plant at each location, and then have enough to do some pilot brewing, et cetera. And we went ahead and fast-tracked it at that point. It had been very strong from an agronomy standpoint on vigor and disease resistance. And it just brewed so well in the pilot brewing, which we assumed it would, that we went ahead and started propagating to plant in 2017, which in Oregon, that means there's an establishment season the year that you plant, and then you get a harvest the next year. So we managed to get a first commercial harvest 2018, and we're off and running, able to get it out in the market to our existing customers. And of course, as it spread from there, we figured it had potential, and we started looking for people like Loughran to partner up on getting it out to some other great craft markets. And so that's really where Strata came from. Well,
so was that so your first plant you grew in or was grown in 2011, and then you weren't able to get anything to brew with for another 5 years? Did that time period just seem like ages from smelling a hop that you knew was going to be fantastic to actually getting any that could go into a liquid?
Yeah, it actually was a fairly fast process. It was, the cross in 2009, the seeds get overwintered. That next winter, they get planted in an experimental yard in 2010. It takes them a couple of years to establish in that environment, which is why it wasn't until 2012 that we got some hops off that one plant and were able to do some small scale, like home brewing scale type of a thing, right? And again, from there, you need to expand it into an advanced nursery. So you've got that 2012, small harvest of a plant. You plant it in 2013. It's not till 2014 that you get to test it from the advanced nursery, okay? And so, yeah, it's kind of like, why can't this go faster? But we've become quite accustomed to working in seasons, not in months and days, right? Seasons and years. And, unfortunately, it's an egg business.
Yeah, and I guess things go a little bit faster whenever you break your time periods down into bigger chunks rather
You
than
do.
days and months. That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, back to you. I think you were the maybe the second or third person in the UK to get your hands on Strata to brew a commercial batch. Talk to us a little bit about your first impressions of Strata from whenever you got your hands on some samples to actually being able to put it into a commercial sized brew length.
Yeah, as I'd read about this mystery variety, we every Easter we have a IPA festival at our brewery and invite brewers over from the US to attend that, and try to do collaborations with those guys. So like the other half and Equilibrium, and so on. And always asking those guys when we're planning the recipes what's ticking their boxes in over in the US right now, because often they get their hands on these smaller trial, first commercial grows, what have you, of their new varieties. So if there's something to watch out for, then that's often the way to find it out. And they all just came back saying Strata's the real deal. And I was asking around, trying to work out where I was going to get my hands on some of this from. And then through Crosby, got reintroduced to Will after having known you in your brewing days, and obviously doing a Rob a couple of months later. Once you had some, once you were able to get over, and then I say, beyond the softness of the pellets, the aroma that leapt out of that Strata was off the scale. Like the quality is fantastic, but I don't think anything had been quite as pungent, even from a sample, as that Strata, and that massive passion fruit note aroma you get off the start. I got passed around a few of the brewers, and I think everybody was massively impressed. So there was no brainer to sign up for some to try on a commercial scale. It was great to obviously be able to get some so fresh after harvest as well for you guys. I think like 6 to 8 weeks after harvest.
Yeah, I think you were brewing with Strata by the second week of October or something.
I think we brewed back in October. Yeah, something like that. But still unheard of for Europe to get harvest hops so quickly. So that obviously big ticket in its box as well. But I think a variety from Rob to opening those first vacuum packs to first dry hop through to finished beer. I think I find few hops that have transitioned so well from pellet to actual final liquid, and in such a consistent and pungent manner. And that ticks so many boxes. I think you talk about there's very few hops that can stand up to a single hop treatment, because they only pack one or two. They only tick one or two boxes, I guess, in terms of what you're looking for in a rounded beer. And so there's maybe one or two commercially available hops to do that, but Strata most definitely joins that list. That you've got that massive passion fruit aroma, you've got plenty of tropical citrus notes coming through, and then it's obviously massively dank as well. Which and depending on how you use it, we've tried it for 4 different beers and different companions and a single hops, and you get a little bit something different every single time, while still maintaining that wonderful balance between, I guess, your more New England flavors, I guess, your tropical fruit, your passion fruit, and so on, whilst balancing out with some of the dankness, which you normally have to add a second variety. With brewers say Citra or something, often add a Simcoe or a Columbus in there just to try and balance it out and add another dimension, and find variety which kind of combines both together is pretty rare, and makes it stand out as something pretty special going forward for any brewer, really.
One thing, and I think you touched on it there, Brian, one thing I've been just completely pleasantly surprised by with Strata is, at this point I've had probably a dozen or more different beers where Strata was the focus, coming out of either Europe or the UK, and it seems like they all taste completely different. Whereas with a hop like Citra or Mosaic, you can pick that quintessential flavor out immediately. Whereas what I felt with Strata so far is there's always a different flavor that I feel is being pulled out of the hop. It's giving it some diversity, so that not everybody's hazy IPA tastes like their neighbor's hazy IPA.
It's crazy to say that, whilst at the same time saying it's so incredibly consistent. consistent at each stage and each time. But I think it's just testament to the depth of flavour that was in there. That there's so much going on that even from the same beer, I think depending where you're at, what the temperature is at, a week or so down the line or so on. It's wonderful to think every time you try that same beer, you're probably going to get something new out of it. And I think that's always a sign of any good beer, is that every mouthfeel's got something new to discover. So the idea that something can be consistent and varied at the same time. But I say, it's just down to the depth of
it kind of reminds me, last September, James Lochran, our director, and myself were over in Oregon for hop harvest, and we were actually with Jim at Bear Brewing in Portland, and they had a wet hopped, a fresh hopped Strata beer, and I remember James taking a sip of it, and he just looks at me and says, "This tastes like everything."
I had a similar experience. We were in Seattle before harvest and found I don't want to say Cloudburst in Seattle, I think. They had a wet hop Strata on there, and I was with the guys from Dare over in Cheltenham, southwest England, and we all had that same reaction of we're expecting great things, having heard of this variety, and everybody, there's a silent nod around the table as everyone tried it. It caught everyone's attention, and I say we had quite a lot of wet hop beers that trip, and that's the one that we still talk about.
Nice. Well, Jim, do you have anything to add to that? Do you find that Strata can kind of offer something to all spectrums of hop profile? What's your sensory on that, and how do you think it applies?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's music to my ears hearing it from Brian, right? We actually named the hop Strata because of the many layers of character that it brings to the table. We've been just kind of giddy that it seems to be nature's perfect hop blend in one new variety, basically. For many people, and then as Brian pointed out, it leaves a lot of room for brewer creativity to come out with different results, depending on how you want to, whether it's combining it with other hops or where you're going to use it in the brewing process. You definitely bring out a lot of different character, whether it's late on the hot side, whirlpool, during an active fermentation versus a cold post-fermentation dry hop kind of a thing. And so, we love the mix of fruit that just seems perfect. Passion fruit is one of the main descriptors we use to tell people. But it's just to get these uncanny blends of kind of, sweeter, rounder, tropical fruits, melon character with brighter, tangier berry and citrus components. And then to have it all tied together with what some brewers here refer to as rock concert cannabis is a lot of fun, and it just works really well together. So we're fortunate that it came out like it did, and is also a very strong hop to grow. I don't know if you want me to go into it now, Will, but
that's what I'm going to jump into next. Is one of the fascinating things I've found in talking with you about Strata and in learning about other hops and their agronomical characteristics is how truly unique Strata is in its agronomy, and just everything about it from the time it's planted until the time it's harvested seems absolutely perfect. I was actually about to ask that question, if you just want to jump in and talk about some of the agricultural aspects. And what made me think of it is just that those great brewing characteristics, added to that is that it's quite consistent. It's a very stable hop, partly due to the strong disease resistance, the vigorous growing nature that it has, but also because it's an early harvest hop. Very rare to find an early harvest hop that is kind of a more potent hop with all that character development, but that also then grows well and comes back year after year for a efficient harvest.
So it's wonderful to have it fit into that slot. It's great for the farms. One of our growers is growing nearly 20 varieties, and Strata ranks #1 for requiring the least amount of chemical inputs to be protected, which is awesome. We love the fact that it's a super clean hop. You're right, pretty much every little box got checked in the development of this hop. We're thankful that was the case. I don't think any hop is perfect. It is mildly susceptible to a new strain of powdery mildew that is wreaking havoc on like the Cascade hop fields in the United States, but very mildly, and still with proper cultural practices on the farms, it's really requiring very few sprays.
One thing you had touched on, it being an early harvest hop. Does that aspect affect consistency across lots? Whereas I know with a lot of hops that'll be peak harvest, that'll be ready to pick right in the middle of harvest. You'll get some that's picked early, some that's picked late, and you may get some some off-center lots there. But is there a difference with a hop that's picked at the beginning that's so early in the harvest season?
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen so far, I think, yes. I think that does set it up for the consistency that we're talking about. And it might partly be that we set a rather narrow harvest window for it. We're really looking at August 20 to August 30, so it's really just a 10-day window. And we'll see a very mild range of character from the early harvest to the late harvest, and you'll get a little bit more of the maybe a little bit more of the dank or some of the sulfur compounds. We had one lot that actually even had, just when we would first bring them out, had a tiny whiff of savory of onion that then just sitting out for selection within 20 minutes wasn't really detectable. But that's also the lot that a lot of people gravitated towards, because they're going to use it late on the hot side, and they tend to get some other character that they do want in the beer from what's in that hop, kind of a thing. But for the most part, yeah, very, very narrow band of difference from lot to lot, from season to season. And so that's another positive thing from a consistency standpoint.
So I'm going to ask you both the same question, but I kind of want to tailor it in two different directions. So we'll start with Jim. As far as the future of Strata, what do you guys have planned as far as the growth of the hop in acreage, in output, in spreading it to countries outside of America like the UK and Europe? What do you guys have on the horizon?
Right. Well, we, despite the difficult timing of when we launched the new hop, certainly in the U.S. marketplace, it was a time of a clash, just a big kind of almost a train wreck at distribution points for selling beer. So many people were going to go to the moon, basically, and they expanded their distribution footprints. It came from large craft breweries, and then large industrial breweries buying large craft breweries, and it hit the wall in the marketplace here, and people ended up with way too many hops. And so here we were to launch a new hop into the marketplace. But despite that, the one thing that I became comfortable with was that when you have a hop with flavor and aroma character that just really helps brewers brew beer that sells, that excites consumers, it's still going to be pulled into the marketplace. And so we got fairly aggressive and have decided after the first season, we decided to keep going because we personally feel it's the first hop out there that really can go toe to toe with Citra, and has not only the ability to just take over a beer and excite consumers by itself, but to be used in many different ways and have that consistency that we mentioned earlier, to where there are very few. I think, really, frankly, there's only one other hop that can do that right now, and I think it's Citra. So seeing that, it's a very bright future. We launched the hop very aggressively, more aggressively than Citra was launched, or Mosaic was launched. And then last year we went to about 500,000 pounds. We'll be at about 1 million pounds this year, and we should be, we've got really successful plantings going, just finished up last week. We'll probably be at 1.6, 1.7 million pounds next year. And then the other thing we did is we knew we weren't going to supply the world all by ourselves. We went ahead and licensed one of our competitors here in Oregon. We compete head to head with them out in the marketplace, but they're neighbors and they're friends. So we hooked up with Crosby. We sold them some of our inventory to help them get going, and then we licensed them to plant some Strata fields. So people have options. We have some help getting the hop into the marketplace. We also, in 2017, we embarked on trying to adapt the hop in the Yakima Valley, figuring that you'd need that capacity at some point as well. And so it was a long process. The hop was rather shocked at the difference in the environment, and it took 3 years for it to adapt. But last year, 2019, finally turned the corner and did quite well. And so we've licensed Roy Farms up in the Yakima Valley to go ahead and plant a field this year. And so they will have a baby harvest, and they're selling the hop to people as well. So that it's kind of a multi-pronged approach to being sure that there are options for brewers, that we're staying in a 10-day harvest window that works, that the quality will be consistent, and that we can get enough of the hop out there so that if people are just reasonably planning ahead a little bit, they'll be able to brew with it.
So Brian, first of all, that's all fantastic, Jim. I like hearing that side of things, of where you see the hop going. Kind of the same question to you, Brian, phrased a little differently. And Jim touched on it a little bit, but in a world where you can basically take a can of whatever and write Citra on the side of the can and then put it on the shelf, and you're going to sell the beer because of the name recognition of a hop. Where do you see, from a brewer's perspective and what consumers like to drink, where do you see Strata going? Do you think it's one of those things that's going to be used mainly in one-off beers or specials, or do you think there's a place in people's core range for it? What do you as a brewer see the growth trajectory of Strata being?
Yeah, I guess to echo Jim's sentiments, it has, it should be a competitor to Citra. It's been like, you've looked back over the last 5-10 years of new hop varieties coming through, and there's been plenty where they've come onto the market with excitement, and like a footballer gets christened the new Messi or whatever every time they come through. That same thing is the new Citra. Like Mosaic, which obviously is well established, but I think a bit inconsistent. I think year to year, you got stuff like Equinox, which I mean, after the first year or two, really seemed to just go off a cliff in terms of its intensity. And you got, like, at the moment, you got something like Sablo, but I think it's just so intense and so love-hate. I think it's far too distinct to really establish itself as a stock hopper, I guess, if you're in your fridge. But while starting, it feels like Strata's nailed it. I say, obviously, from the growing point of view, clearly absolutely fantastic. Like massive depth and flavour, multi-purpose. Like whatever style of beer you make, there's a pretty good chance that Strata's going to work in some way. And then just in terms of just intensity and flavour profile, it more than holds its weight against Citra. We have done a 50-50 dry hop with Citra, and I think it's the first time the other hops come out stronger. I think you try that beer, and I'd say Strata is more prominent than Citra. Obviously, they complement each other in some ways, and the passion fruit notes and so on are stronger than ever. But overall, like you get I'd say that cannabis element of the Strata really punches through in amongst all this fruit, and I think it's pretty. We've proven that it can stand up to that variety. So I think that Strata of flavour, that those extra dimensions can really push it on, and like, and I don't think there's been a hop since Simcoe that's really got such a wide profile of flavors to go at from a brewer's point of view. So yeah, I mean, we have the styles I still want to try out in. I'm intrigued to try it, and maybe the West Coast with it. Maybe I say even like an IPL or something like that. It could be. I'm pretty sure it could work. And then we are giving it serious consideration in core recipes, which I say basically saying, right, yeah, this is it's already seeing it as part of our core portfolio of hops. Basically, was in our core store. If any recipe we're putting together, there's plenty of varieties that we wouldn't really consider for a regular beer, but yeah, great to say, get 250 kilos in and go nuts with it in a single hop or so on, just because you can. But yeah, I've got one or two beers in mind in our existing range where I'm thinking of blending Strata in, and replacing one or two more established varieties. Which yeah, I managed to get a little bit more 19 next year or so we can definitely next month or so we can I think we start sooner rather than later that blending it through into one or two recipes and see how we get on. So then yeah, come harvest 20, hopefully it will be a up for us.
And then
not just in specials.
And Jim and I are working closely together to make sure we have that Harvest 20 stuff on a boat as quickly as we can to make yourselves and other UK and EU brewers happy.
Yeah, I'm excited for that, and I'm excited to see if there is that slight transition from early to late lots and so on. That's always really interesting to try. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm also imagining the flavor wheel. You got your citrus and then your floral, and it's just gonna be a circle for Strata, right?
Yeah.
Around 4 out 5 all around.
It's going to be an actual wheel.
Yeah.
So, well, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to both of you. Thanks for joining us and giving us your insight, both from a grower and producer's perspective, and from a brewer's perspective.